I'm going to talk about ships and take you on a slightly different kind of journey. So imagine with me the ships that traverse the Earth's oceans and seas. Imagine in particular the cargo ships, 60,000 of them ply these waters at all times every day. The supertankers that carry vast quantities of oil from one point of the globe to the other, the superfast vessels owned by Walmart that at great speed go back and forth between China and America, bringing an endless supply of all manner of cheap merchandise. These are the symbols of globalization, of a world order shaped under the influence of Ayn Rand and the Chicago economist Milton Friedman, Ronald Reagan, and Margaret Thatcher. They are the symbols of voracious consumerism and a social Darwinistic culture of survival of the fittest. Among these 60,000 ships are those that do the dirtiest job. They transport the worst type of diesel oil so corrosive that no reputable shipping company will handle it. Filmmaker Denis Delestrac depicts the life, condition, and effect of these ships in his documentary, Frightened, The Real Cost of Shipping. These ships use bunker oil, which is the worst kind of diesel that would otherwise be thrown out. It is so thick and heavy that it has to be heated at a temperature of 50 degrees Celsius before it can be used to operate the engine. It is so polluted that it releases sulfur particles into the atmosphere at the rate of 3,500 particles per minute. Compare this to the allowable level of sulfur emissions from diesel cars in the European Union, which is 15 particles per minute. 15 versus 3,500. This emission kills. An estimated 60,000 people die prematurely every year due to respiratory illness caused by the particles released into the air. Sitting in the hull of these ships under the water are very big engines with a lot of friction, which turns the hull into a drum. The noise travels in the same low frequencies in which the Atlantic humpback whales communicate. It is so painful that to escape from it, the whales leave the waters and go to the beach where they die. Based on the autopsy, it is believed that 1/3 of these whales have irreversible ear damage. It is estimated that only 10% of the shipping lanes are habitable for these whales. When they reach the end of their life cycle, these extremely toxic ships are sent to India and Bangladesh to be broken up, literally broken up, an activity which is in itself extremely dangerous. Those who do this work are very poorly paid and have no health and safety protection. And they are not the only ones in this situation. Many of those who work on these ships are recruited from poor countries, paid very low wages, made to work very long hours in harsh conditions, and get to go home to see their families only occasionally. They are virtual slaves. As I heard Denis Delestrac tell the story of this documentary in a CBC interview on October 28th, it occurred to me that he was giving me the perfect visual and emotional metaphor for what I wanted to say today. This ship produces trauma to the environment, to human beings, and to the whales. Underlying the trauma, there are concrete material factors. The neoliberal social order in which we live today is very much like this dirty ship. Well maintained and maintained, seemingly well organized, with clearly defined tasks and roles. Apparently, it sails smoothly. Yet hidden deep under the water is the engine, the source of power, invisible, life-threatening, traumatizing, it kills. And above the water Contrary to the appearance of order, it uses people who are at the bottom of the ship's hierarchy in a way that is completely inhumane. For me, so much of the trauma that people experience individually and collectively results from the working of this social order in which we live. The driving force, the engine of this social order is the ideology or belief system of neoliberalism on which it is founded. On one hand, this belief system demonstrates a very low level of commitment to the notion of social responsibility, of making sure that people are treated with dignity, humaneness, and compassion. It regards access to good support systems like jobs, housing, and healthcare as privilege rather than basic right. On the other, it holds individuals responsible for their condition. It is up to them whether they sink or swim, and if they do not make it, the fault is theirs. They are weak. So much of trauma is the consequence of this state of affairs above and below the water that we call society. There are communities and individuals among us and beyond whose trauma stems from the social conditions in which they find themselves. People who, after long years of work, are thrown out of jobs and into poverty. Students who graduate deep in debt with no certainty they will find employment because a high level of structural unemployment is now the new norm. Families who lost their life's savings in the global financial crisis of the last decade. People in mental health crisis who die at the hands of the police because they could not get professional help due to cutbacks in the provision of care. The displaced, uprooted from their homes and communities by wars and conflicts among the powerful. This list goes on, and each of these situations produces an ever-widening circle of trauma. So while we do all we can to support our fellow beings at the individual level, we need to pay attention to the system or the order that lie at the heart of so much trauma. How do we transform the social order? It is a tough task and requires a sustained collective effort. What Mother Jones said a long time ago is equally relevant today. Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. Perhaps her message was never more true than now. To go back to the dirty ship then, there are things that can be done to improve conditions in the short term and things that must be done to transform them over the long term. They range from use of less contaminating oil, noise reduction, better legislation about working conditions, to eliminating the traffic in dirty oil, and indeed eliminating the dirty ship itself, finally. For me, that is what transformative social change is all about. And besides Mother Jones, I take my guidance from another remarkable person. His name was Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. He was born in an untouchable family in India and rose to be the preeminent leader of the millions traumatized by that country's caste system, a system worse than apartheid that consigns people to the bottom of the society because of their birth. Dr. Ambedkar used 3 words: educate, agitate, organize. We do well to reflect on the strategy of transformative social change embedded in these 3 words while keeping in front of our mind's eye that image of power, the dirty ship. Thank you.